Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I know everyone has very busy schedules. We appreciate you taking your time. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Wild. I am a Federation Vice Chair, and I'm sitting here along with our President, Erika Rudin-Luria. The two of us had an incredible opportunity to go to Ethiopia just last month, a little bit over a month ago, to visit Ethiopia, and as importantly, to actually join a historic flight of 180 new Olim to Israel. Erika, thanks so much for joining me and representing our community so well on that trip, and as always. During today's session, we're going to be presenting an overview on Ethiopian Aliyah, sharing details about what Erika and I both saw in Ethiopia, and talk about our experience on that incredible flight to Israel. And we're going to speak about our support of the absorption process for those that already are in Israel. In addition to Erika today, also joining us from the Jewish Agency is Shai Felber, who actually we had a chance to travel with, was with us during our entire time on the ground in Ethiopia. Shai is currently the Vice President of Aliyah, Absorption, and Special Operations with the Jewish Agency for Israel. Shai has a very long and distinguished career at the Jewish Agency, including positions as Assistant to the Chairperson, Director of Partnerships, Senior Advisor to the Director General, Director of Financial Resource Development in Israel, and Vice President of Community Relations. You got a lot on your plate, Shai. In his current role, Shai manages immigration to Israel from all over the world, including countries in distress, as well as the many programs of the Jewish Agency that help new immigrants acclimate to Israeli society. With everything that's happening in Ukraine and Ethiopia and around the world, not only are you incredibly busy, but we want to thank you for especially taking the time today, but more importantly, for what you do for the Jewish people, Shai, every single day. Before turning it over, though, to Shai, we do want to show you a quick video prepared by the Jewish Agency, which gives you the highlights of our trip.
The Jewish Agency have taken upon ourselves, together with the government of Israel, to bring the Olim from Ethiopia, as we do from all around the world. This is where the journey begins, to the trip and to the Aliyah to Israel.
My family spent 6 months in the Gedar refugee camp. A lot of disease and illness, and we lost one of my my younger brother.
Here we have a document by the emperor of the time giving this land.
May Israel remember and bless them, and mourn the brilliance of youth, the treasured bravery, the sanctity of will, and the devotion of the spirit that tragically perished on their way to the Holy Land. Be not silent, do not stay the mourning until that promised day comes, and all of Israel will return to its Holy Land.
In a very old Jewish cemetery of people who dreamt their entire lives of making the journey to Yerushalayim, and they weren't able to complete that journey, but their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and many other generations that followed have been able to make that journey. So it feels wonderful to enable that journey to finally take place for so many who've dreamed for millennials to make that journey.
ፈቃድ ይሁን ከዚያም የግዴታዎቻችን መስዋዕቶቻቸው ኢየሱስ በሕጎቻቸው መሰረት እንፈጽማለን። የዚህን የጨረቃ በዓል ቅዱሳን በፍቅርና እንደምናገኝ ትእዛዝ በፊት እናቀርባለን እንፈጽማለን።
מאוד מאוד מרגש לראות את האנשים כאן שכמאים להגיע לציון וכמאים להתאחד עם האחים שלהם, עם הדודים שלהם, עם ההורים שלהם בישראל. מאוד מרגש המבצע המדהים הזה של הסוכנות היהודית ושל ממשלת ישראל, משרד העלייה והקליטה, באיחוד המשפחות המדהים הזה.
ለእግዚአብሔር ለመጣው ቁርባን መጠጥ ታፍስሳለህ፣ ሌላውን ጠቦት ሲመሽ ታቀርባለህ።
בהיותם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון ירושלים.
I think the most important thing that we're taking away is to see the actual completion of the Aliyah from Ethiopia. We've been vocal, we've been supportive, but to actually see and be with the people that are making Aliyah is an incredible experience for all of us. And we have seen it live with people and what the humanitarian and impact is of what we're doing.
I was thinking about the journeys and the stories that Sigal and others have shared with us, and I was hearing the people daven and thinking of Shavuot, and I looked at them and I thought, yeah, we were all together at Sinai.
Today I went to the camp, I saw the people, and especially I saw the children. I looked in their eyes, and I saw the faith in their eyes. And I know that we have so big responsibility to do the right thing.
אנחנו כל כך מתרגשים להיות פה ולקבל אתכם במעמד הכל כך מרגש הזה ולראות אתכם מתאחדים עם המשפחות אחרי כל כך הרבה זמן.
To the new Olim who are here today, we want to say, Yehi Shalom B'chelak Shalva B'amotayach. May there be peace in your new homes here in Israel and prosperity in all of your gates. We welcome you, we love you, and we wish you all the best, and we will be with you through your entire journey here. Thank you.
That brings everything back so quickly. Shai, thank you so much for joining us. And I'd love for you to share with our community more about Ethiopian Aliyah and specifically this group, the Operation Tzur Israel Chapter 2 that we are in right now.
Thank you very much, Erika, and thank you very much, Jeff, also for the kind words. I have to say I got the zchut, I got the privilege of doing what I'm doing, and thank you for your generous support. So if you can bring up the presentation, Ilanit, please. I will say, I want you to go through and just to explain a little bit roughly about how did the Aliyah from Ethiopia have developed and who are the Olim that are currently coming. So as you can see, 1984 and 1991, those were the first major Aliyah waves from Ethiopia of Ethiopian Jewry. They were done in vast and very quick operations. Following that, all of the Aliyot to Israel came through government resolutions from different numbers. Why is it important to notice? It's important to notice it because the Olim that are coming currently from Ethiopia are not coming under the law of return. They are coming according to what we call family reunification. Therefore, every time the government of Israel is issuing another decision and determining who's eligible to make Aliyah. If we move to the next slide, you can see what are the criteria upon the decision is being made. So first of all, in Tzur Israel 1, as you saw on the screen, in 2020, we brought more than 2,168 Olim to Israel. That was a huge operation. I need to remind you, it was done during COVID. It was done during a war in Ethiopia under very difficult circumstances, but that's our mission. And we brought the Olim in Tzur Israel 1 under the government resolution. The Olim that are coming today to Israel, as you can see just for an example over here, are very advanced, meaning those are people that have been waiting for 15 or 20 years in Ethiopia to make Aliyah. Therefore, their life didn't stop. They went to school, they went to study in universities, they have jobs, they are working. It's a much more developed community who is making Aliyah in the operation of Tzur Israel 1. And now for the next slide, we can see what are the criteria. So since it's a government resolution, you need to apply from advance in Israel by your family and to say that I have relatives in Ethiopia that are eligible to come to Israel. A team of the Ministry of Interior Affairs, Misrad HaPnim, the Israel Ministry of Interior Affairs, is been sent to Ethiopia, and they're actually doing the first interviews. As you can see, if you have a parent in Israel of a first degree, or you have a brother or sister, then you will be found eligible. The problem, by the way, that we are facing is that we have, in Tzur Israel 2, we got approval for 3,000 Olim to come, but obviously when you go in those criteria, there are much more that are eligible to come. So we have to bring all of those who applied first and to wait, hopefully, for another government resolution to come to Israel. Families with kids, with children, are waiting for many, many years to come. If you remember the first slide when I show you where the government resolution came from, part of the government resolution decided that, for example, if you are over than 18 and you have your own children, you cannot come to Israel. Therefore, we have cut family, unfortunately, by the government of Israel into half. We split the families. That's why we have all the time the continuation of Olim that wants to come. The Olim that are coming now to Israel on Operation Tzur Israel 2, in the next slide you can see, we already have 6 planes that arrived so far. Actually, today was the 6th Olim, and we are almost in 1,000 Olim, which is a third that Olim that have came. It's a very, very young Aliyah. 34% are young adults from the age of 18 to 35. A lot of children, as you can see. It's a challenge. It's a challenge because we need to organize the education system in Israel. It's a challenge because now for the young Olim, the young adults, we need to prepare a program to interact and to integrate into Israeli society. We have more than 150 Olim with academic background. We have more than 500 Olim that have finished 12 years of schooling in Ethiopia. It's a bracha, it's a bless. If in the previous years, and I'll elaborate more when we're going to speak about the Klita in my next chapter, is that if in the past, the Olim that have came, went to an absorption center and find the first job they could, now it's our responsibility to prepare a much better program for them to be absorbed in Israel. And the program that we want to find them can fit with the skills and the ability that they are coming with. Another thing about those Olim are very well connected to Israel. They all have smartphones, they all have family and relative in Israel, they keep update, they're knowledgeable. There's a huge synagogue, as you can see in the movie, and I'm sure Erika and Jeff will elaborate more afterwards, are coming to learn Hebrew, are coming to learn Judaism. We are now opening a center for leadership in Ethiopia. So those Olim are knowledgeable. Those Olim, when they come to Israel, they already know what the rights are. It's a much more mature Aliyah, and it's an Aliyah that is much more prepared to come. And again, because they've been waiting for so many years in Ethiopia, they didn't stop their life. On the contrary, they understood that they need to go to school to learn. Today, in our Aliyah, a nice anecdote, we have one of the Supreme Court judges from Ethiopia who made Aliyah. It's an example, but we have more and more Olim that are coming and are much more able. And this is where our challenge is, to absorb them properly and I will speak in the next part of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shai. Really appreciate it. Very, very helpful. I know when we went through the trip, we had all these questions about numbers. So I know for us back then, it was incredibly helpful. I'm sure for everyone else that's actually on the Zoom call, very helpful to put everything in context. So Erika, we saw so much and we experienced such a great deal on this very short trip in 48 hours. What were some of the most impactful moments for you?
Sure. So I think the moment that kind of set the stage to everything for me was when we met with Jewish agency professional Sigal Kanatopsky, who herself was 4 or 5 when her family left their village and walked into Sudan. And we stood with her looking out over the Simeon mountain range. And we looked at this mountainous area with all of this shading as she talked about both the dangers of the travel, but what really struck me is she talked about how for her family, the goal had always been to get to Israel, that she remembers when they'd see birds fly, that they would say, oh, the birds are stopping in Europe on their way to Israel. And that the goal was always Jerusalem. And so when people asked, you know, how did your parents decide to leave the village? She said it wasn't a choice. That was always what we were going to do. And I think being grounded in that faith and belief that Sigal's family had gave me a better understanding of the whole community and just the treacherous journey that was taken by so many people, and that their desire for Jerusalem was that strong. It was striking, and it was emotional, the trauma that was endured. What for you was one of your most
impactful?
Yeah.
So again, a lot of them to think of, but that first morning when we woke up in Gondar, right? And we were told we were going to davening, so morning services, and that we would be davening with the Ethiopian Jewish community. And, you know, taking a step back, I went on this trip with a little bit of skepticism, only because I really thought we brought the Jews out that wanted to make Aliyah, that the work of the Jewish agency and the Jewish people was for the most part done. So one of the reasons I agreed to go is I really wanted to learn more about it. And you show up to services on this Monday morning and Tuesday morning, and it was absolutely blew me away. About 700 to 800 people. You actually saw some of the pictures on the video, wearing tallit, having tefillin, row after row after row. And if you had any doubt in your mind about whether they were Jewish, it went away at that moment. These are people you saw in the video. They're as Jewish as the rest of us, no matter what may be the definition of the law of return, et cetera. These people are as Jewish and as connected as we are. And when I was standing there with the 800 other Jews, Ethiopian Jews, davening and chanting the morning service, is it a little bit different than what we do every single day? Yes, but that's the great thing about Judaism. It's different across the world in many different ways, but there was a lot more that was in common that was different. And when you see these kids, and towards the end of the service, one of the little boys that we saw in the video was shuckling, he grabs my hand and we're saying the Aleinu at the end together, and tears just roll down your face because I'm thinking of my 3 boys and the Jewish education that they receive and the services that they see every single morning. And they're no different. You know, those kids, the ones that were certainly with us, they're as Jewish as my kids are, and they're as connected to Judaism and to the Jewish people as anyone I knew. So at that moment, when I was really overtaken by emotion because I didn't realize how connected they were, and all of my skepticisms and my concerns really went away. And it was really very powerful. And the second moment I would say is, if you remember, we went straight from there for a home visit. And you saw a couple of glimpses in the video of one of the home visits. It's sad that people in the world, anyone in the world, lives the way they live. These rooms, 6 people to a room that's maybe, 5 by 8, dirt floor, no plumbing, no bathroom, no kitchen. They all crammed in. There's maybe, you go down the hall outside, it's not really even a hall. There's a communal bathroom, which really is just literally a hole in the ground. So the fact that any human had to live that way, but certainly our Jewish brothers and sisters, made us very sad. And the only thing that actually made us feel better was knowing that the family that we were with the next day was going to be part of the 180 new Olim on the plane to Israel. So we knew that they were leaving, but those were two of the most impactful moments for me.
Right, and the woman, the matriarch who was living in that room with her grandchildren, the only reason she could afford that was because she received money from her family that's in Israel already. We also saw, they call it the Jewish Community Center, but it's really like lean-tos, basically. And so we saw the Hebrew classes and the mikveh, and we got to this place where the Jewish Agency funds the struggle to save Ethiopian Jewry, to provide humanitarian relief. Food, bananas are part of it, medical care. And we saw just these two logs that were burned. And as the person is explaining to us, and they're right next to your feet. I mean, there's not a lot of space where we're talking about that over 1,000 meals a day are made on these two logs. And and the emotion of it, you just want to take everyone with you. I mean, you really just want to take everyone with you, which gets us to the plane.
Right. So talk for a moment about what the emotions were like on the plane with the 180 new Olim and with them marching on. So try to describe, because I know you and I were both really taken by that.
We were really taken. You know, first you see a few older adults that just look terrified. And Micha Feldman, who Abba Micha, the Ethiopian Olim call him, is kind of like the godfather of all Ethiopian Jews. And he learned Amharic. It was his job to help with Operation Moses, Operation Solomon. He learned Amharic, and watching him console a few of the older women that were nervous, that in and of itself, like, you know, Diana, it would have been enough. But as you watch these children with these enormous smiles come onto the plane, it's just, and with this great excitement for the adventure they're going to be on. And I kept thinking, that one's going to be the next ambassador. That's the next member of Knesset. I can picture that one in the paratroopers, maybe a few prime ministers,
You know, for me, it was like seeing some of these elderly members of the community walking on. By the way, remember, for almost all of them, they've never been on a plane before. So until the day before, when they flew from Gondar, they'd never been on the plane. It was interesting when we were flying a chartered Ethiopian Airlines jet, and we were standing there because we pre-boarded. And then when they were getting on, and the flight attendants were saying, okay, you're in row 37C, and they're looking, and they have no clue what they're talking about. They've never been on a plane. They don't know where row 37C is. They didn't really understand the entire concept. And like you said, there was like this fear, but at the same time, excitement. But then when you fast forward to me, as we were like actually coming around the Mediterranean and banking into Tel Aviv to Ben Gurion Airport, and we're all in this position. Whenever you land in Israel, there's always like excitement, there's anticipation, but I'm not joking. There may have been 5 children for every window, and the kids watching the children stare out the window and ask if that was Israel. Is that Jerusalem? Is that, I mean, and that was so powerful. The excitement in the kids' eyes.
The literally singing and cheering.
That's why I say it'll never be the same. Like whenever we land in Israel, there's always singing, but like, it's always, you know, this was much different, right?
No, it totally was. And when you look at the adults, I mean, all of them have parents, siblings, or children that they haven't seen in many years. And so we just had a group of staff that just left Israel. And when the staff were texting me earlier this week, they said that they were at a coffee ceremony at Merkaz Klita, at an absorption center, with 2 sisters, one who was on the plane with all of us, and one who had been in Israel for over a decade. So I feel like we all had more of an idea as to the lives and opportunities that they were, about to embark upon.
And then when we landed in Israel, and then they opened up the doors, I mean, it was the most incredible procession I've been a part of. You can imagine the people waiting because, again, as Shai mentioned, everyone on this trip have first-degree relatives in Israel. So they're not only are they excited to get there, but you can imagine the anticipation by the families. And they actually had a number of families waiting on the tarmac. And first of all, to watch, Shai actually showed the statistics. I didn't realize how young. I mean, it seemed very young on the plane, but until you showed those numbers, Shai, I didn't realize how young they were. And to see those children walk down the stairs and to see them reunited with the family, I mean, I'm like crying now thinking about it. The hugging, the kissing, they haven't seen. For some of these people that are making Aliyah, and this is important to note, for a lot of them, they've been on the list, the community waiting list for 10 to 15 years. A lot of people have been waiting. They haven't seen these family members in sometimes many years, upwards of a decade. So to watch that family reunification on the tarmac and then to see those children who talked about Israel get off and kiss the ground and mean it, right? Yeah. Was absolutely amazing. How about you? What was your takeaway?
I mean, all of that is how it was overwhelming. I mean, I can't imagine how overwhelming it was for the new Olim. And I think the only regret in landing is the community in waiting that are still in Ethiopia. And maybe, Shai, can you talk a little bit about the numbers and how we try to get our arms around who's still there and,
So the numbers that we understand of those who are still waiting in Ethiopia are roughly around 10,000 that are still waiting, from which 3,000 are in Addis Ababa, in a very, I would say, closed and segregated Jewish community. And the remaining 7,000 are in Gondar, mainly in the city, as you noticed. There are probably others in the surrounding villages, but this is the actual number that we identified, that the people that are registered in the community. Also, we have a list of the family relatives in Israel that have registered their families from Ethiopia, so they can apply to Aliyah. So we're looking about at least 10,000 that are still waiting over there.
Can you talk a little bit about how we're helping those that are in and what the Jewish Agency has set up in Ethiopia?
So if you can put the presentation, please. So you described the journey that's starting in Ethiopia. I wouldn't say that this is the next slide, please. I wouldn't say that this is the easy part, but I will say that to bring them is one part, but the real challenge and the real work starts when they're coming to Israel and we need to absorb them. The Olim that are coming from Ethiopia are living in absorption centers that the Jewish Agency is running all over Israel. As you can see over here, we have 13 existing absorption centers, and we now, due to the increasing Aliyah, are in the process of opening another between 5 to 6 new absorption centers. Those absorption centers are the first encounter that they will see in Israel, and not only the housing and the facility, but with the staff. I have to say, with the amazing staff of the Jewish Agency. Most of our workers in the absorption center speak Amharic, are Olim that came in previous Aliyot. So it's nice to see how a new Ole has been absorbed by a veteran Ole. When you come to an absorption center, you come to a family. You're coming to a place that will take care of all of your needs, all of your requirements. It will be your first home in Israel. We have to remember, maybe we forgot, but we just had COVID recently. We have Operation Guardian of the Wall in Israel. And while the Olim are there, we are the one who are taking care of them. When Guardian of the Wall operation started, for example, in Ashkelon, in our absorption center, people went to the bomb shelters and didn't want to leave the absorption center. That was the first experience in Israel. So the first thing we needed was to calm them down. And after 2 days, we have took them out from Ashkelon to the area of Yerushalayim in order to make things quieter. If you can move to the next slide, as you can see, is that the absorption center provide from the accommodation, from making sure that they will be receiving all of the rights, from healthcare, from education, everything, because they are a vulnerable population in the beginning. That's why we need to make sure that they will be properly taken care of. If they're going to the first time to the grocery shop, we need to send with them a translator that will help them. Obviously, they learn Hebrew in the Ulpan, and all of the Olim from Ethiopia are required to do what we call a conversion process, Shiva Layadut, returning to Judaism. It's a 10-month program that they have to do in the Absorption Center. Obviously, we have program for young Olim, and we are aiding them to find employment. I will elaborate more about employment in the next couple of slides, but again, because of the nature of this new Aliyah, that are people that are more educated and have much more abilities, for us, we need to make sure that they will be find the right absorption program and not to go to the first job or the first opportunity that they are facing. While they're in the absorption center, we need to prepare them also to leave the absorption center. They are entitled for 2 years of assistance, and our main aim is to help them to buy a house in Israel or to live, because we want eventually for them to integrate into the Israeli society. As much as the absorption center are like a greenhouse, eventually they need to encounter real life. And encountering real life is to integrate into the Israeli society. If you will stay and live in the absorption center for too many years, only with the Ethiopian Olim, you will not integrate. So in the one hand, we want to make sure that they have the ability to live, and we are pushing them in order to make progress in their life by leaving the absorption center. If you can move to the next slide, please. We are very proud to say that in our absorption center, we have 97% of employment rate. But I have to be honest and to tell you that when you look about where they're going to work, they're going to work in cleaning, housing, they're going to work in factories. The Olim from Ethiopia are going usually for the first job that they can. You have to know that a lot of them are supporting their families in Ethiopia. That's why to get an income is crucial for them, because they're not only supporting themselves, they're supporting their families in Ethiopia. But we need to make sure that the Olim that can do more will do more. That's why we have started new employment programs. We have program with jewelries, creating crafts, bus drivers. There's a shortage of 3,000 bus drivers in Israel. We have a new training program of wiring electronic devices, welding courses. And one of the things that I'm very proud, at least, to tell you is that for the first time, 2 weeks ago, we have opened a new program for high-tech in Israel. The Olim from Ethiopia need also to be taking part of the Israeli society, and high-tech is one of the big things in Israeli society. The course of almost 3 months will give them the ability to find jobs in the Israeli high-tech market, and we hope to extend that. A computer application for call centers. So again, we need to make sure that we are not challenging the Olim to the first job they can. We need to help them to go to the job according to their skills. If you can move to the next slide, please. Is that, again, that's the IT course, as you can see, of the first 25 graduate. By the way, we had more than 150 applications. And we did a long screening process from which we choose the best 25. Next, please. So just there's one thing that is missing over here in the slide, and I will speak briefly about it, is that I told you about the absorption centers, but we are also looking for new way to absorb the Olim. Again, absorption center is wonderful, but it also can hold you back in your integration into the society. So we have a program called Ulpan Etzion in Yerushalayim, where young Olim are coming from all around the world, from Argentina, from the US, from South Africa. For the first time 2 days ago, we brought 20 Olim from Ethiopia to join the Young Olim program. So you have now Russians, Ukrainian, French, American, and 20 Young Olim from Ethiopia.
Great.
For example, that's one program. Another program which we try now to do is to take the Olim straight and to rent for them houses in Israel. Instead of going to the absorption center, rent a house and then start your life. We want to prevent you another transfer from Ethiopia to an absorption center, from absorption center to another house. Another program we're trying to do now with kibbutzim in Israel is to send young Olim for 2 years program where you learn Hebrew, work in the kibbutz, and acquire the profession. So Our whole aim is to change the way we absorb the Olim. It will be much better for them, and I have to say also, it will be much better to the Israeli society. We need to look on those Olim as equal, and not as those who need to be taken care of. We need to, from the beginning, to show them that they're able, they're capable, and they're equal to everyone else. That's the only way for them to succeed in Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Shai. Really appreciate it. We're going to actually have a question and answer period. There are a number of questions that were asked in advance and some that obviously are coming in through the chat. One that just popped up from Ori Jacobs. I heard that it used to be very hard for Ethiopians to get full Israeli citizenship. Is that still the case? Shai, can you talk about that?
So the first 10 months when they're coming to Israel, they get what we call permanent residence, which is almost like in all the Israelis. The only thing they cannot do, they cannot vote. Although in Israel, you got many chances in the 4 years to vote, so that's okay. But after they finish the conversion, after 10 months, they are getting the Teudat Tzur, the Israeli ID card, and their full citizenship in Israel. More than 90% are passing the exam on the first attempt, depending on them. If they want to, they can do it.
That's great.
That's great. So let me ask you, how can we in Cleveland help in this process?
So there is the fundraising, as you know, which is one part, which thank you very much. But from my point of view, is also programs in Israel. We don't have an absorption center in Bet Shean, your P2G community, but we have an absorption center in Bet Alpha, which is not far from Cleveland. We need volunteers to come and to work with the Olim, teaching English and other things. We need support also for training programs. All of those employment programs that I showed you in the beginning, so in the end, are programs that usually we are counting on philanthropy money to make sure that they will exist. And when we're now creating new models of absorption, we need partners. But again, not only of money, that's very important, but also of thinking and supporting. That's why volunteers are more than welcome to Israel from all ages, learning Hebrew. P2G in terms of partnership with schools. I know Bet Shean in Cleveland, you got partnerships. Part of the Olim speak English. Not all of them, but more and more. So we now have a program where we teach English in the absorption center. So they need to train. They cannot train with Israelis. So the much as we can give them the ability and the opportunities like other, that's what I need, Erika.
So Shai, question for you. So in previous Ethiopian Aliyahs, there was always some discussion about whether we were able to put them in a position to be successful, right? So the Ethiopians that moved to Israel, we actually had a chance to experience two major success stories. The current Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia is an Ethiopian Jew who actually made Aliyah a number of years ago, many years ago. And as you saw Penina on the video, the first Ethiopian Israeli member of the cabinet, which was so powerful, and two great ambassadors for Israel. So we've seen obviously success stories from previous, even though there have been a lot of challenges. I know you talked a little bit about what the process is like now with respect to absorption. Do you feel more optimistic today that the Jewish agency and the government have really learned from the past and are able to do things differently so that 10, 20, 30 years from now, we'll look at Tzur Yisrael and feel like we did a better job and they're all very successful, or at least most of them?
Erika spoke about seeing the next prime minister in the airplane. And I can tell you that when I look about those kids and about the Olim that coming to Israel, they need to see and they need to acquire role models. They need to see that they can do that. Unfortunately, I have to say we have, but not enough. When we had COVID in Israel, we still have COVID, but massive COVID, we wanted to do the vaccines. So we looked for Ethiopian doctors to come and to explain to the Ethiopian community about the vaccinations. And we found only 3, unfortunately. But we made sure that those 3, when they come into the absorption center, will not only speak about the vaccine, but we told the kids, see me, I came like you, and now become a doctor. We need to expose the Ethiopian Olim to more success stories. We need to give the opportunity. And we as a community of Israelis, of veteran Israelis, also need to be able to give them the opportunities. We need to do sometimes some affirmative action from my point of view, at least. So yes, I'm optimistic. When you go into a school in Sderot, you see Ethiopian kids, Russian kids, or veteran Israeli kids, I think it's doable, but it's our responsibility to get them role models and to make sure that they will get the same opportunities as others.
I know that that there was a promise made and that it's really an obligation, a moral obligation to be moving these Olim and reunifying the families. And we're living in a horribly complicated time between COVID and Ukraine and everything else happening. And what is on your plate alone is a heroic, my English fails me even within it. How is it that at the same time as Aliyah has increased from so many other parts of the world, how is the Jewish Agency able to manage this and manage to get the resources that are needed from the government? And obviously we're very proud partners of yours in the philanthropic part of it, but how is that managing? And I guess any surprises or things that have come out of that?
So I think we have a moral obligation to trying to find more solutions for bringing the Olim from Ethiopia. That's the one thing. Unfortunately, to go every year to another government resolution, it's not the solution. Hopefully we're going to have election again. Hopefully there's going to be a permanent government. But we as a Jewish agency and new Jewish communities around the world, we need to advocate towards the Israeli government to make sure that there will be find a real proper solution to eventually find the right solution to bring all of those who are eligible and to finish this tragedy. Because you saw it by yourself, family that is split into half, that's not Jewish from my point of view. And with the Jewish agency, in the one hand, we can support and bring Ukrainian Jews and to rescue them, but not less important to rescue and to bring the Olim from Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that we advocate and we are at all fronts at any given time and not neglecting any of the Aliyot to Israel.
So Shai, can you talk a little bit about whatever challenges the Jewish Agency may be encountering, has in the past, currently today, with the Ethiopian authorities as part of the process?
You want a nice story?
Sure.
In Ethiopia, before they come into Israel, they have to do vaccines, right? I don't know if you're familiar with, but in the Israeli government now, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there's a strike. Why does it matter? Because with the vaccine, we purchase the vaccines in Israel, and we send it to Ethiopia via diplomatic mail. It's much easier, safer, and to release them from the Ethiopian custom. Ministry of Foreign Affairs have told us last week that they're not sending any more the vaccines to Ethiopia because they're on strike, and they wanted to use that as a pressure point towards the government. We went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we've asked, they told us, thank you very much, but no way. So today, after 10 days of attempt, we are sending the first shipment of vaccine through DHL to Ethiopia, and we are trying to override the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that's a small story, but there are many, unfortunately, events in Ethiopia from the war. For example, in the past, we used to take the Olim by buses from Gondar to Addis, a 15-hour bus ride. Now, because of the civil war, we have to fly them to go from Gondar to Addis. Our security, you saw our facility in Ethiopia. They are 500 meters from the military fuel reservoir of Ethiopian army. And when the war broke out, we were afraid that missile will hit that, and we are jeopardizing the community. So we rented an hotel in the city where we took all of our activities over there, the interviews, the vaccine, just to be on the safe side. So I can tell you much more stories like that. But when you're working in third world countries, there are always problems, but our role is to find solutions for them and to make sure that Aliyah will not stop, no matter what.
So can you talk a little bit about what public opinion is like in Israel regarding Ethiopian Aliyah? Is there support around it? Is there skepticism? It seemed like when we landed, but again, it was a small part of the country, there was incredible excitement. I know it was on the news that night when we were in Yerushalayim and Tel Aviv. So it seemed like there was like excitement. But can you talk about, is that true, or is that just a small part of society?
Generally, I can say that there was an excitement. When it's coming to Aliyah in general, people are very happy in Israel. When it's coming to Aliyah from Ethiopia, in the one hand, people are very excited. People know the story. People like the Olim from Ethiopia. But from the other hand, I can tell you that unfortunately, in certain places, we are still facing racism against the Olim. We are now trying to open an absorption center in one of the cities in Israel. I will not say which one. And a group of residents went to court against the Jewish agency of not opening the absorption center in their neighborhood. Okay? And we are overcoming that. Overall, I can tell you the majority of Israelis love the Olim from Ethiopia. Yes, we still have racism, but it's our role to make sure that to overcome that and to fight for them. We as a Jewish agency need to fight to make sure that they will, as I told you again, the full rights and everyone else. I think when you look about when it's family reunification, you cannot be in a situation that you cannot be excited or be moved by seeing a father or a mother not seeing their children for 15 or 20 years. And I can tell you that in the majority of our absorption centers, we have volunteers from the Israeli societies, from schools, from youth movement, from the police. So yes, it's a lovely Aliyah, people like them, but we still have problems we need to face. It's not all 100%, to be honest.
Sure. I know that the Jewish Agency is very experienced with working with many different countries and negotiating how Aliyah is done. The Ethiopian government, I mean, we all know the history years ago, and the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia had shared when he was sitting with us at dinner, had said to us, where are you from? And we told him where, and he said, thank you so much. And he explains that he was one of the Olim in 1991, I think it was, who was ransomed right before the government was about to fall, when the American Jewish community put together $35 million or something to allow in 36 hours, 13,000.
Well, Micha Feldman did the huge operation, Moses operation.
Exactly. Today, I know we flew on Ethiopian Air, which was chartered. Is the Ethiopian government supportive? Are they, I mean, obviously they're in a civil war right now.
So generally, I can tell that the Ethiopian government is okay with the Aliyah. Okay? I wouldn't say that they're supporting it, but they're okay with that. When a year ago the war broke out and there was a lot of calls in Israel, let's send out the Israeli army and rescue the Ethiopian Olim. We got a very clear message from the Ethiopian government saying we will not allow that. We don't want to show that our country is currently in a war and you are rescuing Jews. It will show that our regime is weak. So as long as you do the things and you bring the Aliyah in a quiet way, in a responsible way, there are no problem with that. If you try to embarrass the regime, especially when they are in a civil war, that will not work. So when you do things in a smart way, and usually it's work, we don't find obstacles in the way. For example, all of the Olim coming from Ethiopia need to be issued what we call laissez-passer. It's a temporary passport. We are the only organization in Ethiopia that can take those laissez-passer for the Olim by group and not individuals. So we did it nicely and smartly, I would say.
So Shai, a couple of numbers really jumped out at me. So tell me if I'm wrong with this, but if I remember correctly, 3,000 were approved on this version of Tzur Israel. Remember, the Knesset approved, I think, the cost to the Israeli government, again, not counting what the Jewish Agency spends on JFNA and everyone else to support the actual Aliyah, was 527 million shekalim, roughly.
You were not far, 570 million.
Okay, so that's pretty close. So 570 million shekels just for 3,000 people. So when you think about that, that's a tremendous cost. And going back to the comment on public support, one thing that I learned when we were in Tel Aviv was that out of all the Jews that make Aliyah across the world, what the Israeli government does for the Ethiopian Jews is really far more than they do for almost anyone else. They talked about housing, a subsidy for actually purchasing a home in the future, and not just like the 10 months of time in absorption center, but they are putting them in a position to be successful. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it makes other people feel and the support around that?
So the big support is mainly for the absorption, as you mentioned, for the absorption center, part of the cost by the government of Israel. And the rest of the money, the majority goes for grants while they leave the absorption center in order to buy houses. This is the only Aliyah, by the way, that still get grants from the Israeli government to buy houses. Not other Olim are getting that support. I think that people understand in Israel, and there's no frustration about it or there's no anger about it, because they understand that where the Olim from Ethiopia are coming from, without that support, I'm not sure the right term in English, they will get stuck in the absorption center. And we need to do things differently in order to support them. So I think overall, and me as a taxpayer, and not because I work for the Jewish agency, I'm very happy that my money is going towards the Klita of the Olim from Ethiopia. People understand that, where they're coming from, and why the need is different.
We have another question that's come across our cell phones. What way is the Jewish community in Ethiopia treated by the external community?
So all in all, they are treated well, I have to say. There are no tensions. No, when there's ethnic tension, that was in Ethiopia, an ethnic tension between Muslims and Christians, the Jews are not part of it. There are hardly any anti-Semitism against the Jewish community, because people know that in a way they are temporary residents. Okay? So overall, I can say that they're okay. There are some jealousy from time to time because they're getting support, financially support, or they're getting food assistance. But overall, there are no tensions. They are quite well treated. And also the government of Ethiopia making sure that they are protected. We give also security. I cannot tell you about any case that I've noticed in the years that I'm working in the Jewish agency when we had any anti-Semitism attack or any aggression against the local Jewish community.
One more question, by the way. Is there a process that's put in place or a program where once they make it to Israel, the teenage Ethiopian Olim are prepared for the army service? Or is that something that's not in the cards for them?
So definitely we have a program, maybe you're familiar with, called Acharai, which is after me, follow me, the famous call of the paratrooper, follow me. Yes, so when they're getting to the age of 17, grade 11 or grade 12, we have counselors that are coming to the absorption center and explaining about the army and preparation programs to join the IDF. Today, there's much more successes in joining the IDF. There are less people that are abandoning IDF because if you prepare them well, they stay well.
Okay. Can I, maybe one last question, just because we didn't focus on it much, and can you say something about the humanitarian needs? Because I know that it's something that we're all actively raising money for, because we're not going to forget about the community in waiting at the same time as we're so excited for those, that have made it to Israel.
So when they're coming from the villages to Gondar, a lot of them are trying to find jobs because now it's going to take time. But people know that they are temporary, so that if they're getting a job, those are very low income position. Usually the wife will not go to work, only the husband. And if you want to rent, because you cannot buy still, it's not a house even, you saw it, a small shack, you pay between $30 to $50 a month. So we know that we also need to support those communities financially. So one thing is family from Israel that are sending money. And secondly, also through the general support of the Mandel Foundation, is nutrition programs where we are supporting either children until the age of 5 years old or a mother that are breastfeeding the children. So there are programs where we support the more vulnerable ones, and mainly we do it by two ways. There's a kitchen when you can come and get a proper meal twice or 3 times per day, and sometimes, like in Addis Ababa, we give every family a food package over a month. So yes, there is assistance for those who really need that and cannot support themselves directly. And also during COVID, as you say, we have sent tremendous amount of hygiene products, from masks, from alcohol gel, and everything that the community needed, mainly when COVID started in Ethiopia in the famous outbreak.
Perfect. Shai, I want to thank you not just for taking time today on a very busy day for you with everything you have going on, but more importantly, really want to thank you for what you do for the Jewish people every single day. As Erika and I were talking when we were in Ethiopia, the Jewish Agency folks, you really are Jewish heroes, and we really thank you. We're proud to be partners with the Jewish Agency. You guys are doing amazing work. Thank you for taking the time. Erika, always love traveling with you. Thank you for coming with me to Ethiopia, but more importantly for you, thanks for exercising the leadership that you exercise and show every single day on behalf of Cleveland. And we'll tell everyone, I'm sure you all know this, whenever you travel with Erika across the world, everyone always comes over to the lay leaders and says, you are incredibly lucky. You have one of the best CEOs in the entire business. So we're very blessed to have you, Erika. Thank you for your leadership. We appreciate it. To everyone on today's conversation, thanks for taking the time. If you have any questions or you want to know how you can help, please reach out to Erika, myself, or any Federation staff to learn how you can help support what we're doing on the ground there. And of course, lastly, we couldn't do anything that we're doing, especially the support of the Jewish Agency, without your support of the annual campaign. So thanks for all that you do. And don't forget, it's on the screen, Super Sunday /kickoff, August 28th. Please register now. You see the information on the screen. Looking forward to seeing all of you there to start. That's incredible first campaign and looking forward to being a big part of it. So thanks everyone for taking the time today. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you.